If I asked you to solve this question without a calculator, would you do it in your head? Not likely. You would probably take out a pen and paper and start writing it out. But isn't it interesting how finding the solution to a simple math question requires pen and paper, yet we as humans hope to solve our grandest life problems without writing it down? A few months ago, I presented a workshop on self-development at an organizational conference. There, I talked about common concepts you may have heard of like systemic goals, the 80-20 rule, and identity maps. But to make it more interesting and unique, I also blended ideas from atomic habits, blue lock, and my own experiences. When I presented that workshop, I received a lot of positive feedback, and an attendee said that I should make a video on it, so here I am. Today, I'll be going over that same workshop, presenting ideas as fluidly as I can so that you can take control of this year. This is the Strive to be One of a Kind. Hello everyone, this is a workshop presentation called The Strive to be One of a Kind, presented by yours truly, Rats and Roses. This is just a workshop, as you've seen from the introduction, that I gave at a conference, and I'm going to try my best to give it here and now. So, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so first is I have this worksheet that you don't necessarily need to print, but this is going to give an overview of what we're going to be doing today in this time frame. And it is just something I crafted that we'll go over. So there is the identity map, knowing who we are now, and there's intrinsic and extrinsic values, which I'll talk about later, as well as my 6-pillar philosophy, which I'll bring up, and then our ideal self, who we want to be in the future, and we'll talk about our whys and our reasonings. We'll talk about drainers and energizers. And then we'll go on to the 80-20 rule, which a lot of people already know about, as well as systemizing your goals, which you might have already heard about, but I think it's good to know these two. And we're talking about making it easy, which is some stuff from Atomic Habits. And then we're going to talk about inspirations and types of inspirations that help you keep motivated. And then the action step, which I think is the most important step in the sense of that a lot of people consume content like this and they feel good about themselves, but you need to actually do something like now, day after watching this, or within a week that really brings change. You can't just watch the video and go on to the next videos. You need to actually make action after watching this video. And then we're going to talk about reflection again, because this was a workshop. I wanted people to reflect and see what they got away from this. And I'm also going to have you all do that. And then this is just moving further beyond. I don't think we'll go too much in depth about this, but this is just something I do personally, which is a yearly bingo board. It's still a way to put down your goals. And it's actually back here. I'm not sure if the camera can capture that, but it's just a way to, especially because it's a new year. And I think it's a good way to put your goals on and keep in a fun and interesting way. But yeah, Google Doc description, link is in the description. All right, so real quick about me. I was a nerd growing up. For the past 7.5 years, I've had a 4.0, or I guess 7 years, because I got A minus, 2 A minuses this semester. So I was kind of a nerd. And then I worked out and I became a gym rat, got some muscles. And then one time I was not necessarily sober and I climbed up walls, as you can see here, and I got titled Rat King. I was like crawling on all fours. And one time I did a performance where I kind of did like a werewolf transformation over a full moon. So people called me a furry. And then I started drinking out of a Hershey's bottle as my water bottle, called the Hershey's guy. And recently, or I guess no, a year ago, I did an acting thing, and I'm known for my character, Dr. Eugene. But I didn't talk about, oh wait, there's one more slide. And nowadays I am trying to pursue content creation, as well as something I did recently is board game making, which I need to get around to that video as soon as possible. But yeah, I made a board game, pretty cool. Anyways, okay. I did not talk about myself for no reason. I wanted to talk about this to help give you a spark or an idea of identity maps. So to know what we want to become in the future, of course we need to know who we are now, right? How can I picture this envision? Where's my starting point, right? How am I gonna think of the end point if I don't know my start point? And don't just think of nicknames like I had over here, not just nicknames. Think about things that you do, like for example, gym goer or academic warrior or athlete, right? Stuff like that. So think about those identities. Over here, I put some examples. So student, son, board game designer, line dancer, dancer, investor, gym rat, friend, right? And then not just labels and roles. I want you guys to think about good traits and habits that you have. What are skills that you can leverage to push you towards your goals? What is something you like about yourself? Do you like, I like me, I like that I work out, I like also exercise, I like my sense of humor, I like that I'm very punctual on time, I like that I'm creative, optimistic. These are things I like about myself. But not just liking yourself. We're understanding the whole package. We want to be holistic here. So think about bad traits and habits you have. For me personally, I have poor sleep. I'm really working on it recently with my golden hour, which is a video I made recently, and I think you should check it out if you'd like. But it's about morning routine, or not necessarily morning routines, but just a routine where I can feel good about myself. And I also identify as being stubborn, overloading my plate a lot, procrastinating, rotting. So these are bad traits that I just need to keep in mind when developing my goals, right? So I want you guys to reflect on that as well. And what are your values and principles? I didn't write too many, for example, but these are just things that you don't want to give up on. You don't want to compromise. Like for me, no matters what, I want to maintain my good sense of honesty and being genuine. I cannot be a snake, right? Let's just say I need to be a millionaire, right? I wouldn't be a salesperson in trying to do that in the sense of like they're snakes, right? Well, I'm not too sure if you're a salesperson, correct me, but I don't want to be something I'm not. So know what you won't give up. I forgot if I mentioned, but this identity map, or no, this worksheet, I want you guys to come along with me. So I recommend you print it and write it out because after that introduction, but it's not a need. We'll go over this together. But moving on. Okay, so this is a diagram on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. It's basically intrinsic is more towards yourself. For example, I like to do art because I just do it. I like it, right? Or I do art because I like it, right? And it's some like interests, mastery, curiosity, pride. It's because deep down you want to do it. Compared to extrinsic motivation, this is because I do art because people like my art and willing to pay for it. I don't really like art too much, but I'm good at it, so I'll use that to do it. So there's like grades, money, career, stuff like that. This leads to our next point of which side are you? This is a diagram from Blue Lock where it describes this intrinsic extrinsic thing where an individual who maximizes his talents by prioritizing whatever they find important. For example, they don't want relationships, they don't really care about it, but they do want love, right? They want money, they like to do art, so they'll do it. But they don't do baseball because they hate it. But if they were the best baseball player in the world, they still wouldn't do it because they don't like it. However, extrinsic, on the other hand, let's say you hate baseball, but you're really good at it, you would still pursue it because you care about the rankings, the results, right? So that's related to more like financial, intellectual, physical, like career, right? But intrinsic is more focused on creativity, social, mental, right? And I think this ties into the idea of one of a kind. This is more on the unique side, while this society ranking, that is like one of the greats, right? I think you need to find a balance between what do you want to pursue? Do you want to be one of the greats? Do you want to be one of a kind? Do you want to be a mix of both? But that's how I usually split it up. One of a kind is more intrinsic, while one of the greats is more extrinsic. That's not necessarily the absolute truth, but that's typically how I find things. And if you've seen Chainsaw Man, you would know about the country mouse and the city mouse. I think it sort of relates here, not too much with hindsight, but I think like the city mouse would be someone who enjoys the thrill of society, right? And what they care about, while a rural person or a country mouse will just want a simple farm, no distractions. It's just what they want. They don't have to deal with society. So yeah, this leads us to our next slide of my 6 pillars as well as understanding what you value. So I personally have a 60-40 split. I think I tend to lean towards extrinsically subconsciously. I don't want to be I don't want to be an 80%, but I think 60 is a good amount of percent. Something to remember is that extrinsic isn't necessarily bad, right? So if you go here, finances, physical physique, and intellectual career, that stuff isn't necessarily bad, but it's just less prioritizing about what you want. So that's why I would prefer around 60. I don't want like an 80-20. I want like a 60-40. I want to prioritize things that do matter, right? It's not like society's not going to deem them important for no reason, right? They deem it for a certain reason. So that's why I'm more of a 60. This is what I want to be. And now I'm moving on to my 6 pillar philosophy. This is just something I like to help simplify life. I think a lot of my goals and hobbies or my approach to life falls into strengthening these pillars, which is creativity, social, financial, physical, intellectual, and mental. A lot of these fall into that. And for example, lifting, physical, investing, financial, hanging out with friends, social, reading books, intellectual, meditating, mental, doing dance, creative. I think me personally, sorry, I ate earlier, but me personally, I think I have too much creativity and I've just been doing so much. Like I have a board game, content creation, boxing, or I guess it's more physical. But I have just so many hobbies. I think I want to desire other things. I want to pursue other things. I think I'm so set on the creativity field that I want to do other things. And I think social is something I really value because moving or going past college, I want to think about which friends I'm going to keep after, right? Or not like keep, but like which ones I'll keep in contact with, right? And finances is also very important to me. It's not number one, but because obviously like money can't buy like deep relationships, right? But these are just things that I want you to consider. Where are you standing at now in regards to these pillars, and where do you want to be, right? So all this is just building the idea of understanding yourself, this identity, knowing this identity over here, and knowing this is all to just know who you are. Because again, we need to know our start point to understand where and how to get to our end point. Which leads to this, the end point or the ideal self. Know who you want to be in the future. If you could be anything in the world, what would it be? And you would put it here, right? So wake up consistently. I want to do that. I want to have energy, 8 hours of sleep. I would love to do that, right? I am someone who meditates, someone who doesn't brain rot, someone who can lift 225, someone who makes money off their board games. If I could have all these, if I could have anything, I would put it here on my ideal self, right? And read books. This is something old. This is before I realized my mistake. I made a video on my failures and how I should not be a reader. So that's something if you want to check it out. Because I think obviously everyone would want to be a reader or everyone would want to have that information, but I'm just simply not someone like that, right? Or not everyone, but it's just logically sound in the sense of that reading is good, right? It can give you so many benefits. But for me personally, as much as I love gaining knowledge, there are other media forms that I don't have to force myself to be a reader. But that's just a side tangent. But think about identities, right? Who do you want to be in the future? Do you want to be an athlete? Do you want to be a runner, an artist, a book writer? Think about what would you want to be, right? That's why we talk about knowing who we are and knowing our flaws. Fixing those flaws can be one thing for your future self, but also just bouncing and expanding more on your current strengths, right? Like increasing my bench press. So think about this is really important. So just think about who you want to be in the future, because this is the whole point of this, right? This is a strive to be great or one of a kind. So really imagine if you could have anything, what would it be realistically, right? Or dream on, but no, like oh, I want to go to space in a year. I don't know. Okay, moving on. So, this is a quote by Tony Robbins. Robbins, oh my god. But people are not lazy. They simply have impotent goals. That is, goals that do not inspire them. So, think about a gamer who reached the top 0.1%, whether it be League of Legends Challenger or chess 2000 elo or an artist who can sell art for millions of dollars, right? They want them. Or no, I want to focus on gamers for a second, right? So these gamers, they are looked down by society. But in reality, they've achieved a goal that not a majority of people cannot do, right? Top 1%, 0.1%, right? Were they lazy? No, not necessarily. It was the fact that the game was fun, right? And it sucked them in, and they used every strategy that they could to improve and become better, right? So we want to learn how do we translate this idea of improving and becoming the best to other aspects, not just games, which leads us to this idea of flow state. And this is a picture again from Blue Lock, which we need to balance the level of challenge to our ability. For example, if my goal was to become the best soccer player in the world, that's way too much anxiety, right? It's way too hard, right? Or if it's just to learn how to kick a ball, too easy, right? We want to find the perfect goal that is fun and motivates me to do it. Can't be too hard or too easy, or else I'll be lazy and just not do it, right? So I want to find that flow state, right? I think achieving and knowing how to enter flow state is something that's it's an underrated skill. Because for me, I think like when thinking about chess, personally, I think I if I'm tapped into my flow state, I'm in just such an improved player. As well as badminton, right? When I'm warming up and doing like a rally, it's really boring for me. It's just like I'm not my life isn't on the line, right? If I'm facing an opponent who's just too difficult, it's not gonna work. But if I'm playing a perfect who's just my level and the end score is like 1921, like that is the perfect badminton partner. I just came from badminton, so that's why. But we want to talk about having a goal that really motivates you and pushes you, right? It can't be too hard, and it can't be too easy. And that leads us to the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, which says that 20% of the effort can lead to 80% of the results, right? Think about this. Think about 100 study methods, right? Would it be efficient if you some of them are obviously not as efficient as others, right? So I think index cards, I think let's see. I don't do these ones that often because I focus on the actual 20% that brings me, which is like practice questions, practice exams. Those will give you the best result. But someone who does flashcards and like rereading your notes and highlighting your notes, that doesn't do anything. You want to focus on the actual effort that does something. Someone who highlights their notes for 10 hours is going to get way less done than someone who just does practice exams for 2 hours, right? Does that make sense? You want to choose the right effort, which leads us to picking one goal on your ideal self that you want to strive for. If you look at this ideal self, one of these should pop like instantly to your mind that I want to do that, right? And that will improve my life. That one goal, this one goal is going to make my life 80% better. Not 80% better, but if I did all of these, right? This would increase to maybe like a 20% increase in life, right? But this one would do like an 80%. Not increase again, but like the results of the fruit of benefit would be a bulk, right? If I did all these, basically the benefit would be 100%, but if I did this solely, it would be 80%. Why? Because I think waking up consistently gives me the energy to do all this other stuff, right? So I think I need to focus and drill on that, right? Or similarly enough, limiting to rotting could be arguably another one. But let's say I hit a 225 bed. Yes, I hit it. That's cool. But would it be that life changing? Not necessarily, right? So I want you guys to pick one goal in this ideal self that you really want to drill down. I think people have this idea of being overwhelmed, right? They want to do all this stuff that they put down in their ideal self, but we need to take stuff one at a time. Remember, if you say you want to do all this stuff, and we go back to anxiety and this achieving a flow state, if I'm trying to achieve all this, there's no way I can get to this. I would obviously get overwhelmed, right? So we just want to simplify it and just choose the one thing, the most efficient thing that'll lead to the most results. So think about what goal do we want to do? So I'm going to choose waking up consistently in this example. So now we want to talk about why do we want those goals, right? So for this first example, I want to work out more. Dive into that, right? Why do you want to work out more? I want to be good and be strong, right? Why do I want to be looking good and feeling strong? It's because I want to be confident. Why do I want to be confident? Because I'm dissatisfied with who I am now and I'm tired of the way I'm living, right? Deep, isn't it? Let's do another example. I want to get good grades. Why? Because I can get into my dream school. Why is that? So I can guarantee myself a high paying job. Why? So I can support my low income family who has cared for me so much and sacrificed so much. And moving on to the third one, I want to make a board game. Why? Because I think it would look cool. Why do I think it would look cool? Because no one I know has done such a thing of making a board game. And why is that relevant? Because I want to leave an unforgettable legacy that inspires others, right? So of course I could have done anything else to do that unforgettable legacy, but that's just an example of why I wanted to do this board game. So the idea of diving deep into these goals and making them really dramatic is that with goals like these, how could you lose, right? How could you fail? Failure is no longer an option with this in your mind. If you really drill this idea into your head, you will achieve this one goal that we're talking about, right? I want to work out more. If you repeat to yourself, I'm dissatisfied with who I am, I hate myself, I'm tired of this, you'll work out more, genuinely. But if you just say, my goal is I want to work out more, I want to work out more, you're not going to get around to it. Or I want to get good grades, I want to get good grades. You can say that all you want. But if you don't know why and you're not motivated enough to do so, it'll fade away, right? But if you really think about supporting your family that who've cared so much for you, if you really clear that in your mind, you will achieve the goal, one goal that you picked out. All right, so that leads us to how do we actually achieve these goals that we set out to achieve? We pick one goal, we know our why, how do we do it now? And this leads us to another panel from Blue Lock. Is your first action something that brings you closer to being the best in the world? Is every moment, second, minute of your day really doing anything for you to get closer to becoming the best? Really think about that. Are you doing anything to work out more, get good grades, make a board game? You don't necessarily need to spend every second of your day, but you need to do at least something a day or at least twice a week, right? You want to make strides. You can't be having this goal and being drunk on this dream without actually taking action, right? So that leads us, before we move further, is drainers and energizers. So I'm having memories of when this slide was on my screen and a photographer was on taking pictures of my workshop. And this is like the least professional slide. But let's think about drainers and energizers. So, or not necessarily just drainers, but what's stopping you, right? A lot of people say that finances are stopping them. And in that case, if finances are really stopping you from achieving your goal, then your goal should be finances, is what I personally think. But moving on to drainers, environment, that can be friends, that can be a gloomy room, a messy room, right? These are things that can impede you from achieving your goals. And then another common one is time and energy, which leads me back to the next thing I'll talk about, again, which is the 80-20 rule and using your time efficiently. But just work on time management, right? Time management is a very underrated skill. We need to all know how to use our time better. And I think probably the best way, again, is the 80-20 rule, which I'll go into. But think about what drains you, right? And obviously, if it drains you, try to avoid it, right? Or try to work on it such that it doesn't drain you anymore. Example, work on your finances or work on your time management. Now, talking about energizers, this can be friends. Mostly when I talk about friends, I want to talk about friends not who just are good at socializing, but friends who push you towards your goals, right? You can have a friend doing the same thing similar to you. You can be working out with your friend, right? For example. So that's how you can be around people who have similar goals to you, similar mindsets. You don't want to be someone who drags you down, right? That would be a negative environment friend. All right. Meditation, that personally helps me. It just clears my mind, helps me stay focused and think about my day, mostly journaling in the sense. And music, obviously, you go to the gym, pumping in music, you can be super energized. It can be throughout your day, just listening to music. Music obviously is a powerful thing. So think about energizers. So for me, it's like outings, nature, power naps. These are all things that are energized. And if you know what energizes you, let yourself relax and embrace these things, right? Embrace the energizers, dissuade from the drainers, right? So the 80-20 rule that I was bringing up so many times. So let's actually apply it, right? So in that one goal that you chose, I chose waking up consistently. What is the one action that would help me achieve that? Obviously, it'd be tiring myself out and sleeping on time, right? I can't say that because I think it's like 1 o'clock, 1 a.m. But point is that choosing one thing that would actually lead you to achieving that goal realistically. For example, I want to work out more and get a better body, right? There are a million exercises that people advocate for you to do, but realistically, you only need bench press, pull ups, squat, deadlift, right? That will overall cover your body for the most part. You don't need to do all these fancy exercises like the million exercises people preach, but if you only had those four, you'd be pretty solid. That would get you an 80% of the results. You won't have the most perfect body, but you have a decent enough body with the least amount of effort, right? Similarly enough, you don't need to be doing 3 hours of gym every session. 1 hour works perfectly fine. If you do more than 1 hour, you start getting into this territory of wasted effort. Not wasted effort, but effort that leads you to less gain. Moving on to investing, there again are a million stocks you can choose from. Way more. This is way more complex than gym. But realistically, if you just invest in the market, the general market, which is SPY M, that 20%, very low effort, is gonna get you 80% of the results. A lot of people struggle to beat the market, right? So if you just do that, that'll be perfectly fine. So that's an example of wanting to invest. Find that one thing, the 120% that would get you the most. For example, another example, dance. If you learn basic footwork, right, like a cross step, a side step, a box step, all these small self-thing things, you won't be the best dancer in the world, but you'll be enough to survive on the dance floor, right? And just learning basic hand movements, basic foot movements. You don't need to learn all these fancy K-pop moves, all these crazy breakdance moves, all this like hip hop. You can just learn the basics, right? Again, basics can get you really far. And another example I have here is when I was thinking about becoming a YouTuber, what would be the one thing that really would push me? It would be scripting and voicing a video because then I can do all the other stuff. Because I could watch a million videos, right? That would help me boost my analytics or have a better thumbnail, blah, blah, blah. But like that would be effort, that would be less results, right? I want to do scripting and voicing because that would realistically push me to actually making a video come out. That's what I want to focus on, right? So yeah, that's the applying it. So I want you to take that one goal and try to think about what is the one thing that I can do, one or two things that are really simple that will push me to my goal, right? Think about that. Don't think about the excess. You want to be efficient with your time, which leads me to my next example or metaphor, right? Okay, so this axe, right? This is really ridiculous, but it stuck with me for years. And my friend, this was back in middle school, and he said, he was quoting someone else, so he didn't profoundly say this, but if you had 10 hours to cut a tree, I wouldn't just start off and just start hacking at the tree. I would spend the first 3 hours sharpening the axe, right? That is, oh my god, it's so beautiful. Like, I think people are very eager to get started, but really think and use your brain, right? Sharpen the axe would be similar or equivalent to finding the 20%, right? Spending the time to look for that 20%. And Of course, the person who sharpens their axe will probably cut it down in 5 hours, right? And do it much faster than the person who just hacks it with their dull axe. And this leads to this idea from Atomic Habits that everyone has similar goals, yet not everyone achieves them. Take, for example, two basketball coaches. They both want to become the world championship, right? But one does and one doesn't. Why is that? It's because how they approach their goals, right? So obviously, it's not the goals that make the difference, it's your systems that do it, right? Think about that. Again, everyone wants to be a millionaire, everyone wants to be the best, but not everyone is. So it's not the goals, right? It's, how you sharpen your axe or how you approach things. So, moving on and adding on to that, breaking it down. So, for example, I want to get a six pack. That everyone has that goal of six packs, right? But not everyone goes deeper. I want to do 100 ab workouts. Now that is a bit more rare, right? And going even further deeper, one ab workout a day, right? So, because 100 ab workouts, yes, it's good, but you want to break it down further, right? Again, another one, making money on YouTube. Everyone has that goal, a lot of people do, but first let's break it down and go to 10 YouTube videos, or maybe one video a month, right? And all these are like time frames. I didn't do that on purpose, but it tends to fit in with breaking it down. And improving public speaking is the next one. And then learning prosody, which is just aspects of that, and then learning one aspect a week, right? You can improve public speaking. Everyone wants to do it. Who wouldn't want to do it, right? But, really break it down. And I want to mention, sorry, I just looked at the GIF at the bottom right, but I really want to mention executing in a way that is unique to you. And my example for this is going to the gym. I did not like hitting legs. So what did I do? In a way that is new to me, I just went to the gym without hitting legs. I just did upper body, push, pull, and there was no legs. Why did I do that? Think about this. If I did legs, I would be so exhausted, and I didn't like it at the time, and there's no benefit to me. And I would probably drop out of the gym. I wouldn't be consistent. But me skipping legs, which is more unique to me, not everyone does that, is a way for me to be consistent. So find a way that for it to work for you. Maybe one ab workout a day doesn't work for you. Maybe one very excruciating, two very excruciating ab workouts a week would be more fitting for you. Or one video a month doesn't work for you. Maybe find a way, like one script one week, edit or record next week, edit for you. Try to break it down so that it works for you, right? Not everything fits, right? One routine is not gonna fit for everyone. So don't just follow blindly some advice. You want to do this in a way that is unique to you. Out of breath, but we're almost there. All right. So now making it easy. So versus environment, for example, putting a book on your bed. So now you don't have to reach out and think about, oh, where's my book, blah, blah, blah. It's right there. You have like no excuse. You're about to go to bed. Just read a few pages before you go to sleep, right? That's a way to utilize it in your environment. Utilize rewards. For example, I can get one boba or spoil myself with one boba every time I do a video, something like that. Friends, again, very motivating. Surrounding yourself by friends who have similar goals and motivate you. I think recently one of my friends are getting into content creation, so I'm going to keep in contact with them and just, we can motivate each other to keep going, keep pushing, right? And habit trackers, some people do this. I like to do this through like journaling. Like every time I journal, one of my goals is to do 250 days of a golden hour, which I've mentioned previously. So every day I'm on my journal, I just increase the number. So I'm like 7 out of 250, 8 out of 250. So just keeping track of it helps you build a mountain of evidence, right? And also keeps you a little bit accountable and makes it look nice if you fill out everything. And finally, identifying yourself with what you want to execute reduces friction. For example, smoking is what's used in Atomic Habits. If you are a smoker and you're trying to quit smoking, you can identify the smoker and go against your ideals and identity. Okay, think about this. This is a little bit confusing, but let's say you're a smoker and you're trying not to smoke, but every time you're offered, you would say, I'm trying to quit right now, right? That goes against your identity of being a smoker. But let's say you identify yourself as a non-smoker. You're simply following your identity, right? Someone offers you to smoke, you say, oh, I'm not a smoker, right? You may have been in the past, right? But currently, I'm not a smoker. You have to try to force yourself to change your identity. And that way, now it's not going out of your way to reject the offer. Rejecting your offer is just in your nature as an identity. Again, a little bit scuffed. I would recommend reading the book Atomic Habits. They explain it a lot better. But the point is, you want to have this identity that, oh, for example, I'm an athlete. So going to the gym is only natural for me to go, right? I'm not And think about this, I'm a lazy person, and now I have to push myself to go to the gym. It's a bit more difficult than I'm an athlete. Going to the gym is natural, right? So that's just an example. All right, so let's go for some overall tips for progress. So this moves on to getting inspired. And the first one I want to mention is this beautiful philosophy of asking yourself, what would my ideal self do? So going back to this ideal self that we created, right? You have this picture of your mind of this beautiful, perfect version of yourself, right? And that will help guide you in times of doubt, right? So for someone who, let's say my ideal self benches 225, now I'm at the gym and I'm tired as heck, right? And I'm like, I can't keep going. But what would my ideal self do? My ideal self would keep pushing, push just one more set, right? And is he satisfied with my work now? He's not satisfied. Until I keep working, what would I do? What would he do? What would my ideal self do? He would push, right? For example, someone who meditates. Obviously, it's in the morning and sometimes it's busy, but my ideal self would set aside time to meditate. Again, another thing, limited broadening. My ideal self would not be on his phone scrolling through Instagram. He would find a way to limit himself. Or someone who wakes up consistently. If I'm offered to hang out with my friends at 12 a.m. midnight, and my ideal self, what would he do? He would probably reject that offer and go to sleep. So those are some examples. So think about your ideal self, and at times of doubt, right, or needing motivation, what would the person that you envision, what would he do? And the more you do that, it will close the gap from who you are now to the ideal self you want to be. Let me repeat that. The more you ask yourself, what would your ideal self do? And the more you take action on that, you'll get closer. For example, what would X do? So there's an example in Atomic Habits where it's someone who's trying to lose weight, and it's just they keep asking yourself, what would a skinny person do, or what would a healthy person do? And as they kept asking yourself, would a healthy person choose apples or cookies? Right? Obviously, they kept that in mind, and they kept closing that gap between where they are now and being like fats into becoming skinny. And also, adding along, think about inspirations in real life. People, right? This is someone who, of one of my friends, very close friend, he is on his own, he doesn't have parent support, and he's making a living and surviving, and I respect him so much. And I asked myself, what would he do in times like this? Would he give up? No, he'd keep pushing himself. And similar to my friend over here, so much growth from him. If you're watching this video, hello. No, there's no way he watches my videos. But point is, he's someone who motivates me a lot. And think about just other inspirations, like Isaka Yoichi over here, my goat, he's an amazing adapter. What would he do at times like this? Or Samuel So, what would he do? What would someone who looks with this physique, how did he get that physique? What would he do? I would be benching on so much right now. My god, I love lookism. Anyways, and also you could use funny memes or whatever to inspire you. You are the lion, okay? And also another thing is quotes. I love quotes that inspire me. So these are three. This is from League of Legends. Live your life, chase what you desire, what else matters, right? I repeat this I repeat this quote sometimes, back then a lot, but nowadays I'm using this one, which is something I made personally. Strive and struggle until you become one of the greats, because I just like the way it's crafted. And it's not just striving, there's also struggle, but you just keep going until you become amazing, right? And this is from a song, Be Yourself or Die Dreaming. It's an amazing song. I love this song. Anyways, so get inspired to do your goal. That's just a tip for progress. Another tip is doing change now. So this is the action step, right, on the worksheet. I realize I haven't been flashing this worksheet as often, but I mean, it's not too close to the screen, but this is one thing that I'll do this week to move myself closer. I think people have this idea that you can change your life at any point. And although that's true, you need to change your act. You need to change after consuming content like this, because you can't just keep consuming content like this and not changing. It's disastrous. You think you're making progress, but you're really not, right? So you need to really change now. Change that identity from someone who doesn't work out to someone identity is now an athlete, right? Or change that identity to someone who doesn't draw to an artist or a reader, right? You want to really change your identity now, get a piece of paper, force yourself to do it, set an alarm for like tomorrow, like 5 p.m. to really focus on your goal, right? So what course of action or what action are you going to take right after this lecture that will shift the course of your life? Because you can do it, right? But if you put this off, like right now, if you watch the entire video from here to now, and you still don't do anything, you're going to stay in the same spot. That's the brutal truth. I'm sorry to say that to you, right? No, I'm not sorry. This is tough love, right? If you've seen, I don't know how long this video has been so far, but if you've seen from beginning to end now, and you're listening, and you're not changing after listening to all this, then I don't know what can help you, right? I've given you all this, and I think it's enough to push you to at least some direction, right? So that's just side tangent. Sorry to be cruel, but really take action. This is the most important thing. That's why I'm really emphasizing it, right? Because if you don't take action, you're not gonna change. So really do that. And again, you can't open new doors with old keys. You need to change your ways. Okay, let's go. Okay, and with that action, don't be afraid that you're not making progress. You are making progress. And this is another thing from Atomic Habits, which is the ice cube example. So let's say an ice cube melts at 39 degrees, right? 39 degrees is right here. But you are at 32 degrees. So you put in the effort and raise the temperature, 33. But the thing is, nothing happens to the ice cube. It's not melting, right? You raise it 33, 34, 35. Putting in all this effort, the ice cube is still not melting. 36, 37, 38, nothing happens. But right when you raise it to 39, the ice cubes just starts melting like crazy. 40, even crazier, right? The point is that your effort is raising the temperature and your goal is the ice cube, right? It melting. So every time you put in effort, every time you work out, you're raising the temperature. And the ice cube melts and you see your results over time, but you don't see the results as you go. People expect that you see results as you progress, but realistically, results happen slowly and exponentially grow, right? This is the value of disappointment. Everyone works out, they think they're going to see results, they don't see anything. They think they're here, but they're here, and then they give up. We have to really keep going and try to melt that ice cube, right? So basically the idea of accumulated effort, right? You're not gonna get it instantly. So know that even if you are making progress, you don't think you're making progress, you are making progress. So long as you're diligently raising the temperature properly, right? If you're doing improper stuff like highlighting your notes instead of actually practicing practice exams, that's an example of raising it improper. And then highlighting is not gonna get you to melt like ice cube, but doing it proper, raising your temperature, it will bear fruit. Okay, and I think this is, not sure if this is the last one or not. No, second to last one. Reevaluating your goals. Again, I keep referencing my old video, but it's one where I wanted to become like a singer and improve my singing voice, but upon further reflection, I don't even like singing that much. Like, it's something like, oh, who wouldn't want to have, if like I could snap my fingers and I could learn how to sing, right? That'd be cool. I'd snap my fingers instantly. But do I really want to put in the effort, right? Does it really matter to me for me to do that? There's so much other stuff I could be pursuing, right? So reevaluate your goals. Do you really want it? Let's say I want something now, right? Last year, beginning January 2025, I wanted to pursue singing, but then a few months later, I reevaluated it, not anymore. So things change, right? And that's completely valid. So reflect and make sure you still want it. That leads into your whys again. Really make sure you know your whys, reevaluate everything, and always adapt. Adaptation is very important. So yeah. This leads to our last one of giving yourself grace. At the end of the day, we are human and we have limits. So don't ignore your body when it needs rest, right? And a quote that really stuck out to me is, even fast cars need fuel. You could be the fastest car in the world. You can be the most amazing person in the world, but you still need your rest, right? So don't think you're the exception of, oh, I'm a fast car who don't need fuel. Ain't nobody like that, right? We all need a rest. Give yourself grace. Remember the ice cube example. Give yourself grace when you don't see the results, because it's happening slowly by bit with the right proper technique. You will have progress. Just give yourself grace and forgive yourself, right? So, reflection. This is just takeaways. Again, this was a worksheet or workshop that I did, so I want people to take away something. But what's one reminder that you want to leave with today? What did you learn? And we can go over everything real quickly. So, there is the example of journaling and writing down your things with a math question. There is identity maps. Knowing who we want are helps you identify who we want to know in the future. This idea of intrinsic, extrinsic, which one are you? This idea of 6 pillars and how should you maximize them? And ideal self, what would your ideal self do? That's a good way. That's a good one to learn. This idea of flow states, 80-20 rule. I think a lot of people already know this one. And digging deep to your 3 whys, that's a good one as well. Really emphasizing these goals and your whys, putting them drilling into your head. This philosophy of, are we really putting in effort every single day? This one not too much. I think everyone can identify dreams and energizers. Applying it, the axe principle, I would really love that. I love that one a lot. Systematic goals, I think a lot of people already do this or understand that concept. But yeah, and getting inspired. find ways of inspiration, quotes, right? And action step, you need to do action now. The IQ example, reevaluating your goals, giving yourself grace. These are just all these are options of one thing that you stuck away with. And I would love if you guys put your reflection actually in the comments. That'd be amazing. I'd love to hear everyone's progress. I think everyone's provides a life perspective. But anyways, moving on. How can you use your unique strengths to move closer towards your ideal self? Remember, for example, the gym example, my unique strength, it's not really a strength, but unique personality. I did not like to hit legs, so I was able to hit my ideal self of becoming buff without hitting legs, right? Or another example is creativity. My strengths are creativity and being punctual. Punctual is just something that helps me, like, I don't know, get to class, but leveraging my creativity to do all these things, right? To help me reach my ideal self. So, understanding yourself and knowing your strengths, try to use that and leverage that to do something. Let's say you're very stubborn. It might seem really bad. Maybe stubbornness is good, right? Maybe you're stubborn to really achieve your goals. So, utilizing that to, yeah, push yourself. And what do you want to prove to yourself this year? Do you want to prove to yourself that you are in fact an athlete? You are in fact an artist? And how can you make yourself proud? Even if you don't make money from your art, or even if you don't achieve your body, you should be proud of just doing it in the first place. So how can you make yourself proud? Actually taking action, right? That's a way. And it can be the small step. So think about what small step do you need to take action, right? And again, what do you want to prove to yourself? You want to prove to yourself that you can do it, right? That's one example. You want to prove to yourself that you are what you believe to be. You can achieve your dreams, right? You want to prove to yourself that. I'm just looking at this image. But yeah, it's just an overall reflection. And moving forward, again, this is a bingo sheet that I've been talking about and seen in my previous videos, but you don't necessarily need to do this. I think a 5x5 is too much, a 3x3 is just enough, but this is just a way I like to keep my goals. You don't need to do this necessarily, but this is just moving forward. Again, I wanted to give something off to my workshop attendees, but I think it's really cool. I think it's a good way to keep yourself motivated, like, oh, I want to hit this bingo really badly, right? Or something like that. But moving forward is creating a sheet of your goals, because more likely than not, we have more than just one goal. But again, remember, chase that one goal that would lead the most results. Okay. So that wraps up this video. And thank you if you stuck around this whole entire time. Amazing. Even if you stand around, that's completely chill. But if you have any questions, feel free to comment. And if you like self-improvement overall and you like the way I present content, typically my videos are more scripted, but this one was more free-flowing, especially because I did this before. But yeah, feel free to subscribe and don't forget to take action. And yeah, I'll catch y'all later. Peace.